from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. We have a lot of ground to cover today, so I am going to plunge right in if my Mickey will allow me to do so, and if Aurora will allow me to do so as well. Yes, baby girls, Matty loves you. Charlie says, if I correctly understand the line of succession, there is nothing Markle can do for it to leapfrog Harry over William. Even if William ascended the throne and abdicated, Harry would still be in line after George, Charlotte, and Louis. Does Markle plan to take down all four, William and his children? Ridiculous. Well, did you see Kind Hearts and Coronets? Some things are ridiculous. Some notions are beyond ridiculous. That doesn't stop people from possessing them and trying to implement them. And there are many ways to skin a cat. And leapfrogging over four, I mean, but this really, I think, is not a question I want to answer comprehensively right now. You will see why in a day or two, hopefully, why I don't want to address it in any depth at the moment. But suffice it to say, of course the whole thing is ridiculous. But you know, in 1929, the New York Times published a story planted by Elizabeth, who at the time was the Duchess of York, saying how much more appropriate it would be if the Duke and Duchess of York became King and Queen rather than the Prince of Wales at the time, who was wildly popular. And I would imagine people would have already thought, what on earth are they on about? What is this? I mean, this is ludicrous. This can't happen. And it happened. Oops. Sorry. It happened. My computer slipped off my lap. Sorry. So, shall we leave it at that for the moment? But yes, the whole thing is ridiculous. But many things that are ridiculous have materialized because sometimes people are determined enough and take advantage of situations enough for the ridiculous to not only become acceptable, but sometimes even desirable. Let's remember the Duke of Windsor was the most popular Prince of Wales of all time and an extremely popular king. Now, I am not saying that there are that many parallels between the situation with Meghan and Harry, because there aren't. Aside from anything else, David was extremely popular. Mickey, do you think Harry and Meghan are popular? No. Mickey says ridiculous. They're not popular. Rare Earths says, isn't it strange that the possibility of Archie going to Eton is being discussed? I thought the person of interest in that context was Prince George. Very well spotted, Rare Earth. Isn't it fascinating how Meghan and Harry and their team always manage to insert them into everything? So it's George who's the topic of conversation for going to Eton. And the next thing you know is, oh, Archie is the topic of conversation for Eton. I'm waiting for when William and Catherine announce that they're sending George to Mars, because depend on it, in a day or two, you're going to find that Meghan and Harry have decided they're going to send Archie to Uranus. Actually, they won't even need to go on a spaceship for that. They do have many, many facilities in Montecito that would be an approximation of why Archie wouldn't need to leave Earth at all and be naughty. Reprimand me. But yes, isn't it interesting? The hijacking of every subject so that Harry and Meghan end up being the topics of conversation. It's actually ridiculous. Let's stick to the word ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Richie Sue says, Dearest Lady C, Radar Online is saying that while Harry was with his father, sorry. Oh, Mickey, this is too funny. That Megsy made a call to King Charles to apologise to the royal family. I find it interesting that this has been leaked by the gruesome twosome in Montecito. Is this call from Megs to King Charles true? I'm wanting to not believe it. Well, again, we speak about insertion of Meghan and Harry or their children, or anyway, something to do with them. So whatever the topic of conversation is, it's flipped and it becomes Meghan and Harry. So Harry manages to wangle a visit of 25 minutes to his father. Not alone. None of what has been leaked, I understand, is accurate. And now we are being told that in the midst of this, Meghan phoned and Charles spoke to her and she apologised. First of all, Meghan apologising, she's never been wrong in her life. So right there, you should know that that's not actually something that happened. That's number one. Oh, maybe actually Radar Online is going to correct the story. And next week or week after next, you'll hear actually the king apologized to Meghan. And he maybe was groveling. And who knows, by next month, he crawled on his naked belly over hot coals and broken glass, begging Meghan's forgiveness. Of course, no such thing happened. And I'll tell you something. When people have tea, there's not a telephone right beside them for them to take calls. And if an important call comes in, it's dealt with. But tea is usually not interrupted, and the king doesn't have a mobile. Let's remember that. Now, you just figure out how this works, because I'm going to tell you what happens. Somebody phones the switchboard. Even, may I point out, the Queen, when she spoke to her mother, it's a standing joke. And it's actually something that used to happen. Every day, the Queen would phone her mother or her mother would phone her. And the operator would say, Your Majesty, Her Majesty is on the line. And then the call would be put through. they don't phone each other directly. The calls go through the switchboard. So, can you imagine this? Harry is having tea with the king. One of the girls on the switchboard, and I have to tell you, by and large, they're really nice. So, one of the girls is phoned up by Meghan, and she says, I want to speak to H's daddy. Oh, yes. Oh, who is this speaking? It's Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. Oh? Oh? Quick aside, I thought she wasn't allowed to use the Royal Highness. But what can I do for you, ma'am? Oh, well, I'd like to speak to the king. Oh, your Royal Highness, the king. Of course, I will put you through immediately. I'm not even going to bother to ask the king if he will receive your call, because I know he spent his whole life waiting for you to phone. Do you see how ludicrous the whole thing is? If you know the system, because the calls have to be put through by the operator. And do you think Charles is going to be by the telephone while he's having tea, ready and waiting to pick up the phone? No, someone else is going to pick up the phone, and someone else would then be saying to him, Your Majesty, or Sir, depending on whether he's seen him before or not. We have the Duchess of Sussex on the line, and Charles is going to say, Oh, of course, I'll take it right now. Oh, I've spent my whole life waiting. I mean, you talk about cock and bull stories. I mean, honestly, so I think you've got my point, and I hope my point has been hammered home pretty forcefully by the fact that there is a process which cannot be circumvented, and the idea that Charles, who doesn't have a mobile, is having tea and the phone goes, and of course he's got it on vibrate, and he's rocking, and he picks it. Oh, Meg, oh, I am so pleased that you phoned. Thank you so much for phoning. Talk about pigs flying. I mean, this is a pig that flies. That is a pig that didn't. Home for the Bewildered. Some of these names just crack me up. Dear Lady C, I completely agree with what you say about Epstein. I have wondered why no US citizens' personal emails to Epstein have been published. It looks as though rich, important US citizens are being protected and are hiding behind the publicity directed at Andrew and Sarah York. This is a massive deflection to divert attention away from the fact that the Sussexes are in big trouble, and they have dropped Andrew and Sarah in it. The York girls have been distant from Harry for some time. So there's no downside from Meghan's point of view to dumping the Duke and Duchess of York in the brown stuff, which they, Harry and Meghan, are expert at manufacturing. Why do you think they need 16 bathrooms? Because they spend their whole life pouring forth fecal matter. Don't you think it's really odd that this email was leaked when it was leaked? I leave you with that thought. And as for American citizens, it's really ironic that there are now only 3 people who have suffered massive fallout from the Epstein matter. The Duke of York, now the Duchess of York, and Ghislaine Maxwell, all British. Where is the British press's loyalty? Why aren't they saying, well, the Duke and Duchess of York have not behaved well, and so we don't want them to be representing us as a nation, and therefore we want them to have little or nothing to do with us, the public, and in terms of even just being around. But they're not even saying that. They're saying the family should not have anything to do with either the Duke or the Duchess of York. Ever. They should be totally banished and excluded. For what? They've not broken any laws. I know an awful lot of people really don't appreciate the extent to which the Epstein matter has been spun in such a way that it's damaging to the British interests and the British monarchy. But it's caused little or no damage in the United States to any particular individual. Oh, there are attempts to get it to damage, at the moment, the presidential party. But so far, they've managed to deflect that. The whole thing is just so odd if you stop to think of it. The timing is so odd. I leave you with that thought. US citizens, are they being protected? Well, think about it for 2 seconds. Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Bill Gates, where are the cries for those 3 people who were up to their necks with Epstein in all sorts of things? Bill Gates to such an extent that it destroyed his marriage. Why isn't Bill Gates being shut down? Why isn't Bill Clinton being shut down? I mean, there was no portrait of Harry in Monica Lewinsky's dress. There was a portrait of Bill Clinton in Monica Lewinsky's dress. Why? I'll tell you one of the reasons why. The American media is to a large extent owned by supporters of the Democratic Party. Most of the owners are Democrats, not all, but most. And the ones who are not Democrats are by and large more conservative in their representations, shall we say, than Donald Trump is. Donald Trump is a maverick. There are no 2 ways about it. Donald Trump is a maverick. Many people in the United States of America obviously really like him, and that's why he's now the president. But of course, many people absolutely loathe him. He is a very controversial and divisive figure. So even amongst Republicans, he does not have as natural a base of supporters as any other Republican president or Democratic president would have. So there's all of that that's going on. And it's very convenient that every time Epstein comes up, one or another Briton ends up being in the line of fire, and everybody else is forgotten about. And what's really interesting to me is the craven way in which the British press behave. No sense of loyalty to any member of their own country. I mean, I'm not for a second trying to justify Epstein's behavior, which I have always said was absolutely reprehensible and appalling. But Epstein is not what some people say he was. He's never been a paedophile. He was an ephebophile. Huge difference. Neither is desirable, but to say that, and they're both medical terms. So if somebody died of cancer of the brain, are you going to say they died of cancer of the foot? And then when somebody says to you, well, it's actually, sorry, it's the wrong part of the body. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. Cancer's cancer. No, it does matter. It does matter. It's called accuracy. Ida says, Lady C, why is it that it seems that it is expected of William to do something if Charles is already doing all he possibly can about Harry and Meghan? If, as you say, William will find a way to deal with them more decisively, then why won't Charles find such a way himself now while he is still king? This is why people feel Charles is practically doing minimal to nothing and just sitting this one out for the duration of whatever remains of his life, leaving the mess over for William to deal with and resolve more resolutely. Yes, I think it's a matter of expectation, and I also think it's a matter of reality. It's also a matter of Charles and William are different people. They have different relationships with Harry. They have similar objectives in certain ways, and they have dissimilar objectives in others. I fully get why William never wants to see, speak to, or hear of his brother ever again. I think he's right. I think William's approach is absolutely right. As Jesus Christ said, if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out. And I think that in this case, William is absolutely right. He's resolute and he is decisive, and he should be. And if something should change dramatically and Harry should be let back in, my own experience of dealing with the Harrys of this world, and I'm now referring to my mother, treacherous individual. My father was not a treacherous individual. So once my father and I is kissed and made up, so to speak. Even though I didn't find him 100% reliable because of his attachment to my mother, I knew he was never going to be dishonorable and disloyal, and he wasn't going to actually trash me or try to destroy me or ruin my interests. I knew she would, and she did. And when I gave her a chance after 20 years of non-speaks and let her back in closer, she betrayed me again. A traitor will always betray you. As I said to my mother on more than one occasion, and this applies to William with Harry, I said, treachery is not an accidental happening. It is a character flaw. I was right. I should have listened to what I said. Had I listened to what I said, my sisters and I would be in much better shape financially than we ended up being, because by letting down my guard, I gave my mother the opportunity to rip us off royally, and she did. If William lets Harry back in, he will betray him again down the line. And if he doesn't, it will be a miracle that he doesn't. But if the opportunity arises, Harry will do it because he's done it before. Treachery is an innate characteristic. You're either treacherous or you're not. People who are not treacherous, there are certain things they simply won't do. The mark of an individual isn't only what you will do, it is what you won't do. Well, we know what Harry will do, and we know what he won't do. He will be treacherous, and he will betray, and he won't be loyal when it is in his interest to be disloyal. And he doesn't care about the damage he does. He's made that clear. Charles, on the other hand, is a father. Now, a parent has an entirely different relationship with a child than a child does with a parent or a sibling does with a sibling. It's much more difficult for a parent to abandon hope entirely. I'm not saying that Charles is a pushover, because he's not a pushover. I know people keep on thinking he is a pushover. He's not a pushover. I do think he does things that he shouldn't do. Harry should not be on the royal family website at all. Absolutely not at all. The king hereafter, if he should see Harry, might consider not seeing Harry publicly. But actually, they're in a situation like that. Everything is a two-edged sword, because if he doesn't see Harry the way he saw Harry and was able to get the message across that things were not as honky-dory as Harry made out they were, and that the length of time he spent was not anything approaching what Harry and his cohorts have pretended it was, and that Harry was not accorded the status that he would like the world to have believed he was accorded. If Charles has an out-of-view meeting with Harry, Harry can then spin that. Anything that Charles does, Harry is going to be able to spin. Harry is a spinner. That's what spinners do. They spin. Harry has learned his lessons very well from the arch spinner of much of our, shall we say, observations, Meghan Markle. I mean, she has more spin than Shane Warne would have had on a cricket ball. She is such a spinner. She actually could teach Tony Blair and Alistair Campbell a thing or two about spin. Charles is doing what he should be doing. We need to respect his right as a human being who believes in God, who believes in eternal life, who's concerned about the state of his soul and doesn't want to be pushed, and he should not be pushed into making harsh decisions that he finds spiritually incompatible with his spiritual beliefs and the well-being of his soul. I'm sorry, the man is entitled to behave in the way he is behaving. He's not the pushover people think he is. What can Charles do? He's ill. I mean, for goodness sake, the man is ill. He functions optimally despite being ill. He's trying to do the best he can as a king and trying to implement as many of his beliefs as he can across the board. We should not expect him to be bogged down in the gutter in the squabble between Harry and Meghan and him that Harry and Meghan have created. I do agree he should remove Harry from the royal family website. I think that is a gross error of judgment. I understand the reasons for possibly not doing it. I don't agree with them. But to say that Charles is leaving it for William to do, Charles is doing what he feels he can and should do. Harry doesn't run rings around Charles. I don't know where people get it from that he runs rings around Charles. Well, I do know where they get it from. They're getting it from Meredith Maines, and they got it from Sunshine Sacks before. And they're basically getting it from Meghan and Harry. That's where they're getting it from. Everything originates with Meghan and Harry. And since Harry is not an architect, but Meghan is, everything basically originates with her. This woman has, if you look at the way she operates, so much hatred in her. She is so loathsome. She is so full of hate. She is so hateful. It is truly frightening. That's what Charles is dealing with. I know I had a mother like that. And my mother had the decency to keep it private. She wasn't doing it on the world stage. And I know how awful it is to have to deal with somebody like that. And you have to do it in a way that allows you to be spiritually comfortable. And if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. I made mistakes. For instance, I let that cow back into my life and she ripped us off. She stole my aunt's beach house from under us. She stole the only docking rights on the north shore of Grand Cayman from us. Just stole them. And I mean, I'll never be able to get over that She sold something for next to nothing that is worth tens of millions. Unbelievable. But at least it was private. Charles is having to deal with all of this publicly. I cut him as much slack as he needs, because also people expect him to be as punitive as they want him to be. And if he doesn't wish to be that punitive, the man has to meet his maker. He has to face his God. He cannot, in all conscience, do things that we want him to do because we exist and we think he should do it. I'm sorry, he shouldn't. He should be doing exactly what he's doing. And I tell you, he's a lot tougher than people realize. And as for William cleaning up the rest of it, I am pretty sure William will have no compunction about doing it. So I don't think that people need to pile pressure on Charles to do more than he is doing. Save, I think he should remove Harry and Meghan from the royal family website. And he could beef up the observations that Harry and Meghan do not represent the royal family a bit more. That he can and that he should do. But as for the rest, I think we have lost track of the fact that not only are we dealing with human beings and a man who has a conscience and scruples, but we are also dealing with something that's playing out on the public stage. And he has to be honorable. He has to be decent. He has to be as loving as he feels he should be. He is the supreme governor of the Church of England. I don't know which bit of Christianity says that you should be compassionate and you should not actually be brutal if you don't have to be. People don't understand. I mean, he is doing what he thinks is right. And when you are dealing with people who are drug-addled and addicts and out to lunch mentally, emotionally, etc., it's practically impossible to be in a win-win situation. You're usually in a no-win situation, and you usually end up having the short end of the stick. Usually. It's just the way it works. That is why nobody likes getting involved with drug-addled people, because by and large they are disastrous for your welfare. And cutting Harry out altogether is an option that you and I can see. If Charles doesn't see it, I don't think we should think that we are so much more important than he is, that we should have our desires override his own. That's my take on it. I don't know what your take is, but it's not an ideal situation. But William is a lot more ruthless than Charles. And I say that as praise. Sorry. I mean, William has a streak of harshness and decisiveness and resolution in his nature. He has a ruthless streak in him. Now, I'm going to tell you something. When I was adopting my children, I had a social worker who said to me, she said, "You're going to make a very good mother." She said, "You are warm and kind and loving and ruthless." I said, "Ruthless!" She said, "All good mothers are ruthless." Ruthless means when you know how to put your foot down and say, "Enough." William has more of a ruthless streak in him than Charles. Does that make Charles weaker? Or does that simply make him more understanding and kinder? Does it make him all of those things? I don't think Charles is weak. I think Charles is more sentimental than William. That's what I think. And I'm not speaking from a vantage point of total ignorance, because I'm actually repeating the opinions of people who know them very well. So I hope that answers the question. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. And if you have enjoyed this, please like, share, press the notification bell, and take good care. Godspeed. Bye-bye.